Director of Data Analytics at MSRB. Karl creates advanced analytics that bring MSRB staff and the public critical information. Karl plays a critical role at the MSRB Emma Labs. You might notice something on Karl that is very different. Keep your eyes open. Christine Kuglin is the Director of Truth in Accounting. She's an adjunct professor at the Sturm College of Law and Denver's College University of Denver. We have Stephanie Leiser, lecturer of the Ford School, University of Michigan. Stephanie leads the Michigan Local Government Fiscal Health Project at the Center of Local, State, and Urban Policy. And we have Rob Wigman, Chief Deputy CFO for Wayne County. Prior to joining Wayne County, Rob spoke this morning about his role as CFO of Flint, Michigan. We're going to start with Karl, so I'm going to bring Karl right up here and let him get right to the presentation.
There you go. All right, I'll try to talk quickly, but not too quickly because we don't have a lot of time and we have a lot of people talking. See if I can get the mouse to work. We'll start with this. There we go. I think Liz covered earlier who the MSRB is. We're created by Congress, subject to oversight by Congress and the SEC. I think what she didn't hit on was just how important the municipal securities market is to the creation of infrastructure in this country. There's lots of reasons you would issue a municipal bond, but building large capital infrastructure projects is a core part of that, and most of the infrastructure in this country is built with municipal bonds. The MSRB has 3 websites that we operate. We have the msrb.org, which is our kind of regulatory compliance website. We have the Emma website, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute, that is the site that, as Liz mentioned, over 50% of our staff, we're a technology company. That's where a lot of that work goes into the Emma website. And can I tighten this? There we go. And then the last thing I'm just going to quickly cover off on is Emma Labs, which is the collaboration website. And we talked a lot about collaboration and how important that is. Emma, if you buy a municipal bond, your broker-dealer is required to send you a URL. And that URL will take you to a web page on our Emma website, which is dedicated to your bond. And that page has everything. I think it's unique among financial regulators. And it's really a comprehensive look at your bond. It has the original primary offering documents. It has continuing disclosure documents. It has trades. It has ratings. It has a lot of information about the bond all on one page that you can access with one click if you have the URL. So that all of this flow, it talks about the structured data, the disclosure documents, the trade data, the data we're collecting from broker-dealers, but also from other data feeds that are coming into us. All that flows into a single page so that you can go there and see everything about your bond in one page. It's really, I think, unique in the financial markets in the U.S. As Dave mentioned, we do collect a lot of disclosure documents subject to 2 SEC rules, 15C212 and 15G. They come from across the country, from local and state governments and local government entities all across the country. This is specifically continuing disclosure documents, which are disclosures that come out after the bonds have been issued and are in the market. The breakdown of the primary types of continuing disclosure we get, I just want to highlight the audit financials and the annual financials are about 44% of those filings. But there's a lot of events that occur. Bonds get called, ratings change. Some entities will upload quarterly filings. So there's a diversity. I think we might have 48 different types of disclosures that flow into the system. And we will route them to that page for you to look at. And so the last thing I want to talk about is our Emma Labs application. Let's see if we're still logged in. I might need help with the, oh, here we go. So we had a couple different speakers talk about collaboration, and Emma Labs is the way that we're really trying to engage in more collaboration with market stakeholders. It's basically a site devoted to that. And we really hope to get as many people involved in the market, engaged with Emma Labs as possible, and giving us feedback. We prominently have our Tell Us What You Think here. on every page of MLabs, and hopefully over time we'll work to improve the engagement capabilities of the MLabs even more. Our previous labs included a market analysis tool, which looked at trading data in the market, a disclosure search tool, which lets you search inside the document collections that we have, inside the official statements, inside the audited financials for basically keyword search. And then we also have now our structured data lab, which is intended to be our effort at outreach and collaboration in connection with this ongoing evolution of data in the municipal securities market. So the primary focus of this lab is educational. There's a lot of information describing what, for people who can't come to conferences like this and are at home working or in their office working on their computers, speaking to a lot of the terminology around structured data. We also have a few case studies. We have Rob here today, and also Scott, who's sitting, I think I saw sitting in the back over here. So I don't know if that's his favorite photo, but there he is. We have, interestingly here, the ability to see what the audited financial looks like in both as a, it's a little slow loading. This is the PDF loading. And okay, well, I'm not sure what our Wi-Fi situation is here, but we'll, yeah. Well, okay. So it basically, this feature, which I really enjoy, is it lets you look at side by side a structured data presentation of this statement in the financials, and then you can go through the PDF form of the disclosure and find the exact same table in there, and then do a side-by-side comparison to see how they are different from each other. And I think we've seen this before. The ability to drill down on the data points here. The final piece, and because I really want to be mindful of the time of the other panelists here, is this is a page. Oops. This mouse is a little tricky to use here. This is an example of a page for a particular bond issued by the West Virginia Economic Development Authority. And it gives you an example of all the information that's available on Emma for someone who comes here. Oh, it looks like this is for the offering, but where was I? We kind of envisions with some toy graphs what you might be able to do if you had structured financial data, and you might look at a statistic like current ratio. In this case, what we're looking at here is this particular issuer issued conduit bonds, which is to say there's an obligor. The obligor happens to be a company that's required to do filings on EDGAR in XBRL format. And so we collected their XBRL filings from EDGAR, as well as others that share the same industry code. And we loaded their XBRL files on. And this little toy graph here, which looks very simple, hides a lot of complexity because there's 3 companies over for 3 years, right? So that's 9 different documents, and then these are ratios, so there's 2 data points for each one. But this had to look into 9 different documents to be able to construct this very simple graph. And so that's kind of an illustration of how structured data is different, the ability to look across documents and pull data together. So it's just kind of a indication of some of the power that structured data can bring. And hopefully, I've developed a lot of software. I think I've always found that people don't know what they want from the software until after they see it, and that's when they know what they want. So, and it's usually not what you delivered. So it's kind of a chance to just get a taste or a flavor, and hopefully bring a level of engagement to the conversations that are going on and the outreach that the SEC is engaging in that is a little more informed and leads to better rulemaking.
Thank you, Karl. And Karl is wearing an Emma Labs tie for anyone who's paying attention, that he earned after 30 years of service there. For those of you that haven't gone to Emma Labs, go there, register, click through, bring people there. It's an awesome site. It's got a lot of good information, and it really shows the future of where things are going. I'm going to bring Christine up now and have her start.
Stephanie.
Stephanie, sorry, Christine, you're last.
Yeah. Was that back to the?
Which one's ours? This one?
Yeah, there we go.
Hello again. If you weren't here this morning, I'm Stephanie Leiser. I'm from the University of Michigan. I work with a center there called the Center for Local, State, and Urban Policy, and we've been working with XBRL US and various people in this room and stakeholders in this environment for a few years now. And again, I come at this from, I'm a professor, I teach, I do research, I collect a lot of PDF documents and scrape a lot of data out of them and have my students do the same. And so, it's just this constant, there's got to be a better way, there's got to be a better way. My own dissertation advisor is the one who introduced me to this concept many years ago. That idea sort of stuck in my mind, and I heard it again when I met Mark Joffe at a conference. And so I thought, okay, this is the thing. And then I'm looking around in the academic space, and I thought, okay, who's doing this? And eventually I figured out that we need to be the ones to do it. And if we don't, who's going to do it? So it's been an amazing journey, and, we've met Christine and so many people along the way. And, this kind of coalesced for us in 2021. So we got this grant from the Mott Foundation, which is in Flint. And the stars just kind of aligned for us because the CFO of Flint at the time was my friend Rob Widigan, who has this background of working at Michigan Treasury and having that shared pain of scraping data out of PDFs and trying to analyze and trying to provide that state oversight role of how can we, see what's going on in local governments and try to see those red flags and try to do a better job of helping and being proactive and intervening before it gets to that crisis point. So again, we're kind of coming at it from a broader perspective than just looking at capital markets, although that is a particular piece of interest as well. So we got this grant in 2021 from the Mott Foundation. What this grant allowed us to do is two things. The first of which is to take the taxonomy, which was in maybe a version 1 or 2 draft phase at that point, and really kind of get it to that, next level of comprehensive, toward a professional grade model. We did that by looking at lots and lots of ACFRs that the state of Michigan collects. And so that creation of that ACFR taxonomy, which is now sort of underneath the umbrella of the GRIP taxonomy, in spring 2022. And then we've used that taxonomy, which is now a few more iterations down the road as well, to do a pilot in Flint. And so this is where we worked with Rob Widigan and the staff in Flint, and Workiva donated their use of their WDesk tool to generate their tagged instance document. So we have their fiscal 21 ACFR. That was the first thing that we did. And then in addition to that, we've talked about how the taxonomy has this sort of hierarchical structure, modular structure, where you can, have the kind of common elements that everyone uses and then have some state-specific elements as well. And so that's what we did for the Michigan-specific reporting pieces. So we've got the ACFR and the common elements of the ACFR, in the statement of net position, all those pieces that are common across municipalities. But then we've got our Michigan, we call it our F65 data. And so those are the pieces of data that are specific to Michigan, and they are within this taxonomy. So that is something that, we can envision being replicated across different contexts, is if you have a particular state that's got its own requirements, or if you're a particular type of entity that has its own account names or way of charting, doing your chart of accounts or whatever, it can be accommodated under this structure. And the idea is that there's the standard, right, which is GAAP. Hopefully we're all kind of under the GAAP world. I know there's some non-GAAP entities out there, but we have so much commonality, and that's the power of a standard, is that you can say, okay, cash and cash equivalents, we all agree and know what that means. And if it's part of some structured data set, then we can use it and we can grab it, we can compare it and do our benchmarking. So that's what we did. That was sort of our vision with the city of Flint. I'll show you another instance document. We're seeing a lot of these today. So this is just from that fiscal 21 ACFR, and then all of those things that are in the bars there, those are tagged, and those have all of the metadata attached to them. So we did this as sort of our initial pilot. We did a few additional analyses as part of this grant project. We pulled manually 20 years worth of Flint's financial data. So this takes them through 2 periods of state receivership and looked at their financial data the whole way, just to give an idea of, okay, once you have all of this data in a structured format, which again, we did manually in this case, but how can you tell the story of the city? How can you look at these indicators over time and sort of see how that story is unfolding? Admitted this is a little bit of, Monday morning quarterbacking now, because we know what happened in Flint over this period of time, but we can tell that story and we can see it happening with financial data and with these indicators. And so this is sort of our model for, if we have structured data, this is the type of analysis that we can do. And that's just scratching the surface, right? Because this is what we did with a team of students who just pulled a bunch of stuff, and I'm sure they made little mistakes here and there. We tried to catch them. And then the other thing that we were able to do is, so we have all this ACFR data from the city of Flint, and then we pulled the data that's been reported to the state and compared against the two. In theory, right, that should be a perfect match, because that's the instructions on the state form. It says log in and copy these numbers from your ACFR. In fact, that's not what we found. We knew there would be some errors, but there are actually quite a lot, right? And this is no offense at all to Rob and his team and all the people who worked on this, but this is the issue that you have when you have, humans cutting and pasting these data points. And so, this sort of reinforces the idea that we already have, which is these administrative data, the state level data, are really just not reliable for the type of research that we need to be doing and the expectations we have of valid and reliable data. So just sort of summing up, what are some of our lessons learned in working with the pilot and doing these kinds of analysis? Yes, absolutely, there is a learning curve in the short run. You have to figure out what this is, maybe learn a new piece of software, but really that amount of work is pretty minor in the scope of what it takes to do an audit and produce an ACFR. And so I just, I'm not trying to minimize the effort that goes into something like this, but I want us to kind of contextualize it, that getting your audit done in the first place and collecting that data in the first place, that is the hard part. And then putting the data in a new format, that's pretty simple. And fortunately for us, the technology is already there, and it's been there. There's a robust market for it. Many of you are participants in that market. And so we've had a lot of support along the way on the technical aspects of things, on just kind of how do we figure out the software and what goes where. So the other thing insight that we had along the way is it's really important to work with your auditors during this process, and Rob can probably talk about this a little bit more as well, is, if, we were focusing on the ACFR, the audited financial statements, and so bringing the auditor in very early on in this process and saying, yes, this is what we're doing, this is, what we're trying to get to and why, and then having them think about, well, what are our processes in doing the audit? Are we putting everything in Excel, and how is that working? And just kind of from a nuts and bolts perspective, getting them on board with what is the goal and why do we need to do it and what's their role in the process. The other thing we think in the longer term is that the benefits to everyone involved are going to depend on smooth implementation of FDTA, obviously, and also state leadership, which is what I want to call it in particular. And, so glad to see Bob Hinkle and those folks from Ohio, our folks in Michigan have been involved, and I think it's going to be really critical that states take on this role of kind of getting on the same page to the degree that they can about what data we're going to collect, how are we going to help local governments, because expecting every local government, in the entire country to sort of figure this all out on their own is unreasonable, it's unrealistic. And so we think state leadership is going to be really important, and that's where we have we've really tried to focus our efforts on talking to states and saying, how can we be helpful? We as an academic community, can we provide education? Can we provide support and help facilitate some of these conversations so that it can work ultimately for local governments? And then again, I know we've heard this a few times today. I just want to reiterate that, the question of why, Megan Kilgore from the city of Columbus said this, like the question of why, everyone knows why, right? And we talk to local governments all day and they say, okay, yeah, I get why we need to do this. But the reason that is frustrating, the reason that I'm frustrated by this is how are we going to get there? What support do we have, right? Right now, this seems like just another hassle that we have to deal with, right? And a new software I have to learn. I have to, meet this new requirement. But at the end of the day, they do see, and they tell us this all the time, like, oh gosh, it would be really cool if we could just easily benchmark, right? And say, okay, well, I don't know, we need to, set some new utility rates, just something very pedestrian, very boring, like, how do we set our water rates? Well, if we can just easily grab that data and benchmark it, that becomes a lot easier process. Or what's my property tax burden, right? If a citizen wants to know and you're in a public meeting, well, gosh, you can just pull that data and benchmark it right there on the spot. And so I think just sort of expanding their imagination to see that these are the types of things you can do, and you don't have to say, okay, well, let's send that to our staff and we'll get back to you at some indefinite point in the future, right? We can do it right there and right then. And that also, as Christine has mentioned, is invaluable to our teaching, our ability to just use data in real time and teach people and show people and not say, okay, here's a PDF, take it home, and then we'll meet next week and do some analysis of it. So those are the kind of big picture lessons we think we've learned from our involvement and working through the case studies. And I think, we'll go give it to Christine.
I think we'll hear from Rob.
I think I'm last.
Yeah, Christine's last. We're going to do Rob next.
No, I'll just quickly add for time. I mean, to Stephanie's point, I think rather than just focusing on reporting and compliance with new FDTA, we really need to try to keep the bigger picture in mind. I mean, this change potentially, has the ability to bring about high quality and highly detailed data out into the open market and available for anybody. I mean, as I worked through this project in Flint, I saw, the ability that these new proposed data standards would allow states, researchers, reporters, really anyone to pull vital financial data points with the hit of a button. And to the benchmarking, in local government, we're always trying to see what's our neighbor doing, right? Like Detroit, what's Ann Arbor doing? Oakland County, they keep stealing. People want to work for Oakland County, not Wayne County. Why is that, right? So let's pull that data. Right now we're working on our CBAs, collaborative bargaining agreements, and it's this intense manual pull of trying to figure out what are they paying in Oakland County? Can we match that? How do we match that? So the ability to kind of revolutionize how we're looking at financial data, I think is crucial. And as I mentioned this morning, I just think it's time that we actually modernize and digitize the reporting in the aspects of transparency. I mean, if you guys want to know the financial story of Flint, some of you might dive into the ACFR, but most of you are probably going to call up the finance department and ask someone to walk you through it. I mean, why can't you should be able to do that yourself easily, and that's the goal, and that's what I saw working through this project. The burden, I guess, is time, right? You got to learn the program, but it's just like anything else. You hire a new budget director, you got to train them how Wayne County does their budget, right? So it's just the process of working with whatever program you pick, you know, when the time comes for FGTA. And it was really a one-time lift, right? Like it was the one time going through tagging your ACFR, and then next year you just hit a button and it just uploads that data automatically. And that, to me, when we're understaffed, overworked, and sometimes you get to the time of the audit, it's just you're sitting there thinking, seriously, like what is the point? Why am I doing this over and over and over? And if there's a way to make this easier and bring about financial transparency, I think it's a no-brainer. I'll end with, I found in government, I've been in government since I was 18, and every place I've been, I like to go in and say, that doesn't make sense. That's kind of, why are we doing it this way? And the answer's always been, that's the way we always do it, and it works. And I guess I'm sitting here saying, BS, let's fix it, and let's make it better.
That's a great transition. We'll go over to Christine now and have her close us out. But to your point there, I think that was part of the other panel's discussion, was to make sure that we lay the table with benefits of not just the tagging and the data standards,
Right.
but how we can move forward and modernize reporting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I started you off. I'm not quite going to end you. I think we've got a couple other presentations, but while I'm finding my slides, I'm going to ask you a question. I am a teacher, so it's my job to see if you've been paying attention. How many of you feel like you learned something today? I hope every hand goes up, because if it hasn't, then you have failed. We haven't failed, you have failed. You were on your phones and you weren't paying attention, and that's not acceptable. And if you have learned something, I hope that you will continue learning by coming to Denver this summer on July 31st, 1st and 2nd, and you will contribute to this conversation, because we certainly don't want it to end here. So I want to have you, I'm going to put an image up here if I can find, I'm going to pull this up. Let me see here. Yeah. Let's pull up let's go first with the XBRL site with the tag, because I want to pull something else up. Yeah, there we go. And I want you to, we'll pull up Douglas County Schools down here. Let's get to the front page of Douglas.
Do you want to tell people where this is?
I will in a second. I want to show them something. Oh no, reload it.
We're still on time.
So while Michelle's finding this, I'm going to, so many people have said so many things today, and I feel like I have lived through a lot of this. I'm old, and I've been in front of students, and I've worked in.
Oh, it's GitHub. It's the GitHub problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I use your hotspot?
Okay. So anyways, I see Lewis in the back of the room, and I'm a girl fan of yours from XBRL. I followed him since the beginning, him and Charlie Hoffman. Have you all seen that picture of XBRL? That initial team working on the first XBRL project. I mean, this has been a long time in the making, and I'm just so honored to share the room with Joel Black and Liz Sweeney, and I know I'm going to mispronounce Lewis's name. I say Mathern, but I'm sure that's not correct. Close enough. Yeah, I mean, there's just these amazing people here, and I just, as soon as they get this up, I want to show you something, because they've talked about who are the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? And we've talked about the MSRB, we've talked about municipalities, we've talked about all kinds of stakeholders and people who are in this room. But I'm going to show you who the stakeholders are in just 1 second here, and then I'm going to.
I'm sorry, we have a GitHub issue.
But I want to show you who the stakeholders are, and I don't want us to forget that, because as a teacher, I know every day who the stakeholders are, and I'm going to show you who they are as soon as we can get this up here. So. But they are the people in this room. They are government entities. But this is who the stakeholders are, people. This is who they are. This is who they are. These are the people who should matter to us. Them, their parents who are the tax-paying citizens, their grandparents who invest in municipal securities, they're the stakeholders. And I stand in front of people who are just a few years older than this, 10, 12, 13 years older, and I try to teach them to be interested. And that's why I'm involved in this, and I don't want us to forget that. That is a really important thing for us to remember. And I'm going to come back to this after I take a quick look at, let's see, are my slides here? Yeah, here they are. So I've been involved with wanting to, yeah, help me. I've been wanting to be involved. Let's go to the first slide. For a number of years, and I've been teaching with, and I use XBRL because that's what's out there. I mean, I'm not advocating because I own shares in a not-for-profit called XBRL. I do it because I've used Edgar for years, and I've enticed students to be involved, and it works, right? I mean, it works. And so from an educator's perspective, it helps me with research. It helps me to convince people to come into the accounting profession. There is a problem. We don't have enough accountants. And how do we get them interested? Well, we get them interested by being engaging and instantaneous. And so I want to give you one quick example. So how many of you remember when the Silicon Valley Bank collapsed last year? Yeah, pretty much everybody, right? I'm standing in front of a class of future attorneys, and they're studying corporate commercial law. And they come in the next day and they say, Professor Kuglin, what happened with Silicon Valley Bank? I said, well, let's see. You're in your first accounting class. I bet you can tell. And so we pull up Edgar, we click, we go to the classic version in Edgar, not the inline, but we pull out, we extract their financial statements into Excel. And I said, let's run a ratio analysis. I said, what would help you to know? And we click, we write in a little formula, and we see the current ratio. And I've got this class of attorneys going, how did no one see this? But the point was I was able to do it literally with a couple of clicks. I didn't have to hold up this, say, let's look at Silicon Valley Bank. No, I did it with a couple of clicks. I got them interested. And so thus it makes them interested and they want to go into the profession. They want to become CPAs or corporate commercial law attorneys. And that's my job as an educator. So I wanted to take it a step further. I told you earlier that I really have been interested in putting this in government accounting for literally almost 15 years, a long time. And so I reached out to the Mercatus Center and said, you know, I would like, the FDTA has passed. I was wondering if you would fund, if I were to work with XBRL US and data tracks to create a taxonomy for special districts. We've seen cities, right? That's important. But what about those special districts that people think cannot be done? And so I went out to my community to find people who would work with me. And Mercatus funded the grant, thank you very much. But I went out and I chose a metro district, a school district, a fire district, and a health district. And I thought maybe creating the tags or the technical portion would be hard. That wasn't hard. What was hard was getting people to work with me. I knocked on people's doors. I went to school districts. Hi, I'll do this for you for free. It's a new legislation. I'll do it for free. You just have to work with me. Door closed. Hi, I'll sit down and I'll show you how to do this. Door closed. That was the hard part. I had people say to me, I sat down with some people in a school district. I said, I want to do this. And they said, well, I don't trust the government. And I said, you are the government. And they're like, well, I don't trust other governments. If they see I'm doing it right, they're going to come and take my money. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, I understand your concerns, but let's do it anyways. Let's just see how this goes. But it was the human concerns. I would do it, I would work with them, and then they go silent, and I'd be knocking. So I went and sat with people in the spot where they were and tried to explain to them. And so one of the most important things as we move forward in this is that the leaders of the organization, Kenny and Emily and Joel and others, they are critical, just as Christopher Cox was when the implementation for the SEC took place. So that is one of my findings. Another thing that came up was the different accounts that are going to be needed. We don't really know, but one of the things we did, and I'm going to take you out now and show you the taxonomy, we looked at creating a separate taxonomy for each of these different entities because they have different types of accounts and different types of funds. But so what we did was create if we look here, it was almost 19,000 different records that we created. Here's for the fire, for the hospital, for the metro, and for the school. And what we're trying to do is see how many different ones are there and how similar and dissimilar are they, so that we're not just speculating, we can point to it. We can say, this is where they are, and we're going to ask for confirmation and verification from the entities to see if we have done this correctly. So that was, one of the steps. And then the next step that we looked at, and if I can find, was then to actually create the tagging. And so we have tagged, I'm going to go back to Douglas County Schools, and we actually have tagged it. And so if you look at the top corner, we've done 335 tags. So I would ask somebody, how many of you would anybody like to look for cash while I'm standing here and then tell the rest of us where it is? It's only 185 pages. You can tell me. Or I can go up here and I'm going to just go ahead and cash and cash equivalents as of 6/30/2022. There it is. Now you've seen lots of examples of tagged documents, but that's the difference. That's the difference. And we've done that now for, we can go ahead and take a look at the South Metro Fire and Rescue. And we've done the same thing. Here we've got 406 facts tagged, and we can go ahead and look at the fund name. So you can see it's in some of the notes. We've done that. And then again, there's restricted cash in the definitions. So we've done that now for a fire district, a school district, a metro district, and a health district. And we just received the grant 5 months ago. And so it is doable. It takes work, but it is doable, and it's very, very important. And so what we're looking at next is hopefully to receive more funding. We'd like to take this to another state and do similar entities and be able to compare and contrast the taxonomies. Are they similar? Are they different? What kind of work do we need to do in order to move this forward? So that's basically what we've been working on. And thank you all so much. It's been such a pleasure working with this. Yes, and yes, definitely to data tracks. They did a lot of work, as well as XBRL. I didn't do all this myself. I mean, but anyways, so, all right, thank you.
Thank you to Christine and our panel for a very engaging and informing panel. We're going to move quickly to the next panel. I think, Michelle, we're going to move on to